What's good, everybody? Welcome back after a very long absence. My name is Torraine Walker. Welcome to Torraine Walker TV. As you can see, there have been some changes made around here. I want to thank everybody for being patient with me while I went through some transitioning. I've had a house move. I've had some business things that I had to take care of, as well as some personal things. But we are back, and we are going to be giving you steady content that I hope you all will appreciate. First of all, I want to thank everybody who helped to support through the Cash App, through PayPal, Venmo, and every other way to help get everything together. It's been sort of a struggle, but we got some stuff together. I'm just going to show y'all what I'm talking about. This is what the place looked like when I moved into it. Everything here is everything that was built out to build all the studio that I have behind me now. It's still a process, but we're putting it all together, and I really appreciate y'all for that. Um, you know, this is me sitting on the floor putting some things together while I was trying to create the backdrops and build the desk out and everything like that. But we're getting there. And if you can look behind me, some of the stuff that I built out had made to make this a better looking set, and I'm going to keep building on it. Again, so thank everybody for supporting me. Thanks to everybody who's been rocking with me either online or in my real personal life. So I really appreciate that. Let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about anti-Blackness from Black people. On the night of January 7th, 2023, 5 officers from the Memphis Police Department beat Tyree Nichols, a 29-year-old Black man, following a traffic stop. He died 3 days later in the hospital from his injuries. On Thursday, January 26th, all 5 officers who were involved in the incident were charged with second-degree murder, 2 counts of official misconduct, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 1 count of official oppression, and 1 count of aggravated assault. On January 27th, following the release of the police body camera footage of the incident, protests around the killing began, and they're still ongoing. Now, what's interesting about this particular case is Tyree Nichols, a Black man, was killed by a group of Black police officers. And that fact has raised some hard questions, specifically the fact that anti-Blackness can be inflicted on Black people by Black people. And tonight we're going to be speaking about that with my guests and how it affects many unexpected spaces and Black people who are thought in places who are thought to be safe for Black people. And my guest tonight is going to be a friend of the old show, going to be a friend of the new show, Travis Dr. Hood Scholar Harris. Travis Harris is the director of Revolutionary Black Education for the International Black Freedom Alliance and is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Hip Hop Studies. He's actively involved in the Black liberation movement and does not separate his freedom work from his academic work, which is kind of rare in academia, if you know what we're talking about. His primary goal is for all Black people to get free. He has a plethora of experience in the freedom struggle, from getting Black people out of jail to protesting on the front lines to writing policy in order to make systemic change. Dr. Travis, how you doing, my brother?
What's up? What's up? What's up? My bad, I was muted, but yeah, what's up, bro?
Oh, what's good, brother? It's good to see your face, man. How you
Yeah,
doing?
you too, man. I'm here, bro. I'm here, and I ain't gonna hold you. I didn't even watch the video, and part of that is because, well, one, like I'm from the hood, so some of that stuff I lived, and then in my scholarship, like you talk about, like I spent a lot of time in the archives, and like I deal with this stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's like I'm reading about I felt this one place in the archives. It's like, excuse my language, I'm just quoting the archive. It
It's
says
all good, man. You
it
can speak
says
freely. You can speak freely here. That's what the sign says.
it says niggas ain't cheap, right?
Mm.
And then it's like niggas are cheap, right? And it's like this is when you look at the archives, I'm looking at slave auctions, right? And I'm looking at how we were pretty much commoditized and we just became property and chattel for them to just use and abuse and to maximize our labor to get the most amount of money they can out of us. So for me, I'm constantly dealing with this. I'm reading it, writing about it. and engage with it. So I couldn't I couldn't add because I got to protect my mentals a little bit, right?
No, that's a very real thing, man. I mean, that's a serious thing. Taking care of your mental health and dealing with this system and dealing with seeing this footage all the time. It's a very real thing. You got to be mindful of. That's the truth.
Yeah, bro.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, like I said at the top of the show, this was an incident that was perpetuated by 5 black cops and 1 white cop.
Yeah.
But the majority of the abuse that this man took was from 5 black men.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about how anti-Blackness doesn't necessarily have to have physical white presence for it to be perpetuated.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about the background of that, how that came about in the United States amongst black people, and how that filters down through either policing and other spaces.
Yeah, so first off, shout out to my comrade, Torraine Russell, because we actually had this argument about 3 years ago. And I texted him to say, I was like, my bad, I'm wrong, bro. Because I used to, I'm coming around to it, but y'all heard that term, all skin folk ain't kin folk. And I used to hate that term. But I'm like, dang, it might be true. It might be true. So look, first of all, y'all, I love black people, right? And what I want to do is I want to understand us. I want to understand the way our thoughts, our actions, how we live, how we move, all that, right? And I asked this question: can anybody tell me one black person who has been able to escape the effects of white supremacy in this country, right? And of course, the answer is no. Since we can all agree that we all have been affected by white supremacy, the question then becomes, right, what one of our ancestors said, we're either revolutionaries or counter-revolutionaries. So you either going to be for the movement or against the movement. I was like, is it that really black and white? And this is when me and Tor is going back and forth over, right? But like, it just so happened that today in class, I was teaching about black political thought from enslavement. And we read Incidents in the Life of Harriet Jacobs. And in this book, like the first time I read this slave narrative, what stood out to me was the impossibility of her being able to bury somebody. And look, y'all, I lost my grandmother, right? And that joint hit me hard, right? I was a grown man crying, right? That joint hit me hard. And the thing that hit me the hardest was that my grandmother was gone. She's not coming back, right? At least I had the funeral with my family that helped me to grieve that, right? But what happened in enslavement that Jacobs was talking about was a lot of black people, a lot of our enslaved ancestors did not have the opportunity to bury their dead. So that makes me think about this, right? That makes me think about, okay, we understand the brutality of slavery. We understand the whoopings and all that, and the rapes and all that. But what about what one scholar says, the terror, Terror, of the mundane? Or in other words, how the terrorism that the enslaved dealt with just from being enslaved, right? And what this means then is there are things that we can still talk about today that they still experienced back in enslavement. And then, so to bring this all together, one of those things then, and I asked my students, and they gave me an example, is not being able to properly attend a funeral or something. And this is an example that's going to bring this home. I had a student, she was a nursing student, and she had a significant other to pass. And in response to what I was sharing about Harriet Jacobs, she said that, yeah, while I was on my shift, I asked could I have some time off to grieve this significant other. She didn't even, she said, look, I understand I can't leave to go to the funeral, but can I at least have some hours to grieve? And guess what the clinical supervisor said?
What's that?
No. I said, yo. And I said, and it hit me, and I knew it. Something in my spirit dropped before I said, please don't tell me what race she was. And guess what she was?
Go ahead.
Black woman.
Wow. So this was a black woman telling another person who was
black
that they don't have time to grieve for a loved one.
that just died.
So tie that into how anti-Blackness affects us and how that comes through the system.
So look, this black woman was in a position of power, right? She had the opportunity to allow this young black woman student to grieve, right? But because she was since this black woman, this clinical supervisor, was in that position of power, she was the one who said, no, you can't go grieve properly. And she was the one who forced her to still work as a nurse, which is even, and I even put this together. Listen to how ironic this is. She's playing a role in which she's learning how to heal somebody. So she's going through nursing school, learning how to heal when she needs healing herself. So this is exactly how this anti-Blackness work. Bad black people in a white supremacist system, right? So we know, first of all, we know it's hard for black people to get into higher education, to get into these programs, right? So she finally get in, she finally get a black clinical supervisor. And once she get a black clinical supervisor, the hope is that she would do things to look out for her, especially when someone just died, right? And let's be clear, we're not talking about her doing a favor or like just trying to give her some extra. We talking about she literally just lost a loved one, right? So in this very traumatic situation, she like, no, you can't grieve. And matter of fact, get back to work.
It sounds like old school super overseer syndrome.
Exactly.
You know, on the plantation, on the plantation, you didn't have every overseer wasn't a white person. They always had a middleman, someone, if we want to use an artistic form, like Steven from Django, who had to be the person
that's
who was
exactly
controlling everybody else.
We looked at Steve from Django and Hoppin' Bob. He was like, tell him about the gun line, boss. So, I'm like, why you so happy, bro? Like, what are you so excited about? You're literally celebrating the enslavement pretty much, but other people who look just like you being locked up. And that's exactly what it is.
Well, let's talk about some of the processes in the system that created these issues and the things that we're dealing with. Can you go back into the history and the backstory of how we were dehumanized when we got here, and also how we began to feed on that dehumanization with each other?
Yeah, so the very first thing I want you to understand was this movement of an African communalism, or recognize like how Ubuntu, I am because we are, right? How it shifted from this African communalism, this African community, this African we looking out for each other, towards this European Americanized individualism. So look at what happens with this shift, right? As Africans, it's like, look, we lift as we climb. I eat, you eat, we all going to eat. But this individual American, this Europeanized American individualism is let me get mine. And not only is it let me get mine, sometimes it's let me step on you while I climb up. So let's look at how this works, right? So one, we like the example we just shared with the overseer, right? You see these examples where individual black people will move up, right? So as individual black people move up, then look what happens. The system, white supremacy, white people would then do what? They would say, look at the rest of y'all. Y'all not being good Negroes. Y'all not being like this person. So then this does two things. This then persuades other black people to act like the one good Negro, and also takes the responsibility away from the system that was put in place in the first place to ensure that we're not doing our African communalism, but we're fighting against each other. So yeah, it all started right there during enslavement with the shift from an African communal perspective to American individual perspective, where now it's all about me getting mine. And if I have to step on you while I do that, then I'm gonna step on you. And now, I'll let you jump in right here. But that's it. That's the big major shift that started historically.
All right, now let's talk a little bit about how that mentality filters out from the plantation into, we won't say careers just yet because you didn't have careers at that point. You know, you had like overseers, or you had some people on the plantation with special privileges, and they end up becoming overseers for some of the other Black people. Can you talk about how that develops from the plantation economy into sort of like the general American economy after emancipation?
Yeah. So what happens? No, the first thing that happens is now Negroes are fighting for a better spot on the plantation, right? They're saying, you know what? Let me get closer to massa. Let me get closer to whiteness, so then I can get more resources. So in slavery, this looks like more clothing, more food, etc. Right? Because if you study slavery, a lot of the slaves they didn't have decent clothes, or they had maybe one or two outfits. They didn't have that much food, all that, right? So it's like, all right, now let me get a better spot on the plantation. But by doing that, right, now they're not focused on freedom, right? They're not focused on escaping the plantation. They're focusing on getting a better spot on the plantation, right? And with that, that creates this competition. So now they are battling against each other. And so we started off with this, look at I am because we are, let's help each other out, to now let's battle each other. And then as we move towards emancipation, Reconstruction, and Jim Crow, we actually get what? Racial uplift. And racial uplift on one hand was good because it's saying, look, we not the backwoods Negro that y'all tried to claim we were during enslavement, right? But it also brought about this notion of respectability. And so you get this like what people call now respectability politics, but now you get, these Negroes from the South, or these Negroes from the country, these are country Negroes. They're not as sophisticated or as they're not as sophisticated and as full of class as us urban Negroes are. Right? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying, Torraine?
No, I see it. You saw that when you saw the Great Migration in the 1920s. Yep. You saw people from Mississippi and Alabama going up to Chicago and Detroit and New York. And you saw that same sort of mentality. You can look at some of the literature from that time, from the Harlem Renaissance, and you hear people talking about these people country, and they hated on Zora Neale Hurston because of that too. Remember, a lot of people in the talented temple say, "Why are you going down to Florida talking to them old country bumpkins and stuff?"
But also, right, it wasn't just south to north; it was rural to urban. Because right now you have Atlanta. So you had a lot of urban areas down the south where people will migrate from the rural areas in the south to the urban areas in the south, which explains why you got places like Miami and Atlanta and places that's very urbanized in city, like where you at today, right? Mm-hmm. But the important thing is we can see how this competition that was created during enslavement continued on post-Reconstruction, right? And I don't want to get too much into history, but Reconstruction was like, that was a failed attempt at giving Black people citizens' rights. So you got to fail. So we don't get full citizenship rights. They actually disenfranchise our vote. And also during this time period, they also come in and take away a lot of our land, right? So this is also the time period with the Tulsa riots, the East St. Louis riots. Do you have the war? And when all this stuff is going on, not only is America losing, but Black people are losing, right? So it's like, you know what? Let's spur on this competition even more. And unfortunately, it's let me put down my brother instead of lifting my brother up.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned Reconstruction. During the Reconstruction period, you also saw the rise in a lot of Black legislators in the Deep South, and you also saw, the rise of some all Black communities. Going along with that, you also saw Black people beginning to police themselves with the American model, and that traveled all the way through from Reconstruction, even after the end of Reconstruction, to where you saw when Black police officers started getting hired by neighborhoods and by cities, they could only police Black people. They were not allowed to arrest white people. They were not allowed to even stop white people for speeding, but you could do anything you wanted to Black people, but that was the limit of your power. Can you talk about how some of that may have filtered into what we saw over the past couple of days?
Yeah, so it's kind of strange because actually during this time period, we were actually more unified than what we're seeing today. So it's hard to make the parallel, but because this is time periods where you have like the Black Wall Street, right? So you have the Black Wall Street. Excuse me. Initially, you did have a whole lot of Black elected officials who were able to get some laws passed, right? The Civil Rights Act of 1875, the the 1890, the second, what is it, the second Merrill Act, second Merrill Land Grant Act of 1890. So this allowed for of course suffrage and the development of colleges and universities, and this also led to more literacy and all that stuff, right? So actually during this time, and also there were land grants given, right? And there were some land grants, such as in Kansas, that were open to everyone. According to the 1862 Homestead Act, this land grant was open to everyone, regardless of race, right? So what happened after the Civil War, Black people actually started to get land, and not just a little bit of it, a lot of it, right? So this is why those riots are so important. And when they came in and wiped out Tulsa and Black Wall Street, and definitely like Durham, I know you know about that, Durham and Richmond, from our home city in Richmond, Virginia, with Jackson Ward. We actually was more of a tight-knit community and looking out for each other. So that's why a lot of the elders would say that desegregation is what led to some of the things that we are dealing with today, right? Because there was not as much intra-communal fighting in these tight-knit communities as we have today.
Let's bring that around to one more thing.
Okay.
We know we live in America. We know we are African Americans in America. There's sort of like, and this is just my opinion, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I feel like with a lot of our people, especially people in positions of authority, there's this sort of unconscious understanding that you can pretty much get away with misusing Black people as long as you keep it centered among Black people. But if you step out of that, you're going to have problems. And this situation that happened with Tyree Nichols is sort of like an anomaly in a way, because normally when these things happen, and we all seen the old example from Boys in the Hood where the Black cop snatches his tray up and puts a gun up under his throat and says, "I can kill you right now, nobody will care." A lot of Black people in a lot of Black communities had that story in the real world.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how there's this understanding that I think that Black people know what boundaries to push, and as long as they keep it within their circle and keep it within the community, they're fine with it?
Bro, you reminded me of two examples. I don't know why. I'm glad you say that. Two of them. One, state of Virginia, right? What they did, and there's this book, it's called like Pushing White Supremacy. What they did was they went into basically cities throughout the state of Virginia, and guess what they did? They chose quote unquote Black leaders, right? And pretty much used Black leaders as puppets. They put them in positions, but the Black leaders pretty much did what white supremacists was telling them to do. And you know this is crazy because there were even white people talking about this. I was like, what? You even got white people talking about how they're using Black people? So that's one example. The other example, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. And you know about this, right, Torraine? Mm-hmm. What did they do? Initially, when they were trying to sign patients up, they couldn't get anybody. So what did they do? I can't even remember her name. Somebody can probably find it, but they got this Black woman.
It was Eunice Rivers. Rivers.
Dang, that joint came off quick. But what did they do? They sent Eunice Rivers, because that's the thing. At first, Black people weren't
it's okay, man. This is an adult show. You can do what you want to do.
Black people weren't fucking with them like that, right? It's like, what? Like, we don't trust y'all. Y'all lynching us. Y'all doing this to us. Y'all doing that to us. Why would we trust you? So they said, you know what? Let's go get us a Negro who's going to do our wish. And if she goes out to the people, then we can bring some more people in. And then the rest is history. You have all these Black men who get infected and their lives are pretty much destroyed. Mm-hmm. That's what she was getting at, right?
Yeah. No, that's the point I wanted to get to. I wanted to get to the point where people who look like us do us a lot of damage sometimes. We don't like to talk about that, but I just think this particular incident has kind of brought it out into the open, and we can't escape this anymore. You know, you got to be very, very careful, even with your own people sometimes. And that's
There's
sad.
another example I forgot during slavery. I'm sorry, I couldn't think about this chronologically. But are you familiar with the Gabriel Prosser rebellion?
Mm-hmm.
So he had a rebellion plan from Virginia all the way up to New York. Well, I remember when I'm teaching this, my students was like, "How in the world did he do that?" I was like, "Because our ancestors had skills." Because look, let me tell you what they used to do, right? The house Negroes. That's why I don't like when people hate on the house Negroes, right? Because they had it hard too. The house Negroes actually learned how to read. So what they would do was they learn how to read by grabbing the newspapers, right? So after that, then when the mail came, they learned how to send messages. Our people are so inventive, bro. So they learned how to send messages back and forth, right? So that happened. And where did enslaved Negroes run away from? Where did they run to when they got free? The North. Mm-hmm. So you got between the Black people teaching themselves how to read, them sending the messages, and having runaway Negroes go up north. Then that created this network where they were able to communicate with each other from Virginia all the way up to New York. And this joint was going to be probably one of the biggest revolutions that popped off. And guess what happened?
I know the story, but go ahead and just tell it to the audience.
The first Black person in history to snitched. I joke and say that, but it's like I think Gabriel Prosser was the first Black person that says snitches get stitches, because he actually went and told the slave master about the rebellion, and it forwarded the whole entire plan.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what you're getting at, because you're right. It goes back to enslavement. Think about what would have happened, because we had just had first we had on the Stoner Rebellion, we had the Haitian Revolution, and we had the 1811 one. I don't know if you know about that one, but there was another one in Louisiana, and we had the Denmark Vesey one. So right after that, we had Gabriel Prosser. And this was right before Nat Turner. Look how much of an impact that would have had. They might have ended slavery a couple of years earlier, because you can't keep them down if these uprisings would have continue to be successful. But the one thing that afforded was when the enslaved went to master and total mess up the whole plan.
And if I'm not mistaken, this might have been it where he got like 30, a few coins and a new suit of clothes, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I didn't hear about that part. I was like, once I heard that he snitched, I blacked out.
No, if I'm not mistaken, the person you're talking about, his reward was like $5 and a new suit of clothes. Well, not a new suit of clothes, but an old suit of clothes, and master handed down.
A better conditions on the plantation.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that ties into what we're talking about tonight.
Yep. Exactly.
Bring it back to the idea of this unconscious understanding, though, of how we consider not we, but there are people in positions of authority who feel like they can play with Black lives, and they feel like Black life is pretty much cheap, or if you can mistreat Black people and nothing's really going to happen to you. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So one is just they don't value Black life, right? That's the unfortunate part about the BLM movement. We all know what ended up happening with that, with the twerking and the electric slide and the buying the houses and stuff. Unfortunately, the reason why it's so unfortunate, because that statement was true. That was a rallying cry. So what one scholar said was basically once the African got on the shore of Africa and got on the ship, they literally changed from human to property, right? So if I use a scholarly term, Aimé Césaire said, we got to think of this notion of thingification. So thingification is exactly how it sounds. We basically have become things, right? And the reason why this is so brutal is because it's dehumanizing, right? It takes away the colonizer or those who are in charge, white people, from seeing us as fully human. And let me ask you this question, Torraine. Let me ask you this question. If we aren't fully human, right? And let's go to slavery first. If we aren't fully human and the slave master has sex with the enslaved because they want to, is it rape?
In the mind of the enslaver, it is not. In the minds of a human being, absolutely it is. But if your belief system or your political system says you're not doing anything to an actual human being, you can do whatever you want.
And when you think about that, right, it's pretty shocking, right? Most people don't think about it. But when you actually conceive the thingification, the dehumanizing, when we aren't seen as fully human, then those attributes, the way that we should be treated, is normal. So now it's not even rape, right? That's why they didn't even punish the slave master for committing rape. And that's why post-slavery, so many sexual assaults by white people against black people aren't really punished. It's so bad that during Jim Crow, a lot of the lynchings was based on false sexual accusations.
And you can also tie that into, outside of just sexual assault, any sort of dehumanization or any kind of physical abuse or mutilation. That doesn't matter either.
Right. Because they only see us as humans, right? So then when it comes to, all right, like, what can we do? What limits do they have on what they can do to us?
And who's allowed to do that?
Right. So then, right, and so let's bring the whole thing together. So now we say, you know what? Hey, I want you to be a good Negro, right? And I kind of treat you like a human, right? So how about you come up here? Let me give you some little position, a little bit of power, right? Whether it's an overseer, whether it's a clinical supervisor, you see what I'm saying? Whether it's a boss on the job, where it's the president, where's the president was, where's the senator, right? Let me give you a little bit of power. And guess what? Now we can use you to carry out these actions against these things. And then look, and then this is the next step. And we saw this if you look on social media. Because you are the one carrying it out, now we can say it's not even racism. It's not even white supremacy. Now we can say it's just you just being a bad Negro.
Mm-hmm. Let's move into the next part of it. That's real. That's real. Let's move into the next part of this.
Yeah.
There's a thing that a mutual friend of ours, Rennie, talks about a lot. I don't know if you coined this phrase, but it's a very accurate phrase. It's called John Henryism.
Yeah.
It's this idea that Black males specifically have no sort of inner monologue or any sort of psychological issues or any sort of psychological depth that needs to be taken into consideration at all. It kind of ties into your statement earlier about that if you're seen as if you're seen as not even a human being, then you don't have to worry about the psychological well-being of anything that you see as just as a thing. And I think that ties into the fact that we were originally brought here to basically be beasts of burden. So if you're brought here to be a beast of burden, what happens to that beast doesn't really matter, because you can always replace that beast with another beast. And I think we see that down into the present day, where Black men are only seen as good as what they can provide financially, what they can do as far as physical labor, and as long as they're obedient. And if you step out of that, then you can be disciplined, you can be destroyed, just like a wild animal. Can you talk a little bit about how that mentality ties into what you just said and how that moves in the present day and some of the things that we saw with the brother Tyree?
Yeah, so this is twofold, right? On one hand, unfortunately, as Black men, let's get the sad part out the way first. We buy into this. And I actually admit that I've done that myself, right? I've overworked myself either on jobs, in relationships, in wherever, right? Because it's like, I can say I really wasn't taught to love myself, to take care of myself. Because like you're saying, right? If we aren't considered to have all the full dimensions of what it means to be human, to have emotions, to psychologically, the whole trope of Black men don't cry, all that stuff, right? Then there was nothing that was invested in me that told me I need to love me. Right? And I said this recently, like, for too long, I've really slept on myself. I slept on myself because, one, I didn't realize how much I had overcame, but two, I didn't realize how much was inside of me. Right? Because this is what this John Henryism does. It doesn't factor in how dope, how intellectually smart, how emotionally strong, the depths of black men and black maleness, right? It doesn't factor that in. If the only thing it focuses on how much can you work, how much can you produce, how much can you do for others, right? So on one hand, that's one part. The second part is society loves to push this. And think about it. If all our work is beneficial to them, what they're going to say? Keep working. Just like the slave master. Master want us to keep working so they get the most amount of production out of our labor. What happens in relationships? Oh, you know what? Let me use you. Let me use you to, hey, I want to go out to eat. You know what? Hey, take me to eat. I want you to buy me this. You know what? Go buy this. Oh, you know, you want to work a laborer? You want to work a labor job? Hey, all right, you know what? How about because on a lot of construction sites, right? A lot of the laborers are black men, right? And we're not really taught to get the higher end skill positions, such as electrician or whatever, right? So, all right, here, let me just get you to do all the labor, right? So then what happens in society, using that John Henryism, they're pretty much workers to death.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not connected with people, if you don't have people who are close to you, then they will either consciously or unconsciously feed into it. So they're not checking on you. And so black men listening to this, right? I want you to pay attention to this. Look at the people you talk to and listen to see how many of them talk to you. Ask you, how are you doing? How you doing, black man? What's going on with your life? Or are you only the one who's offering the listening ear, being there for other people, taking care of other people, and doing that? And if that's the truth, if that's what's going on in your life, then bam, that's John Henryism. And I think you talk about this some too, don't you, Torraine? How we always supposed to be the one who offer the emotional support for others, but others don't reciprocate that back to us.
Yeah, I talk about that. I don't talk about it a whole lot, not like I used to, but it's very much a thing where you have brothers who are always supposed to be the rock that everybody's supposed to lean on. But anytime it's time for us to really be vulnerable, we don't really get that because either people who are supposed to be in our corner or say they care about us don't really understand that we're emotional human beings and we have psychological well-being that needs to be taken care of as well. So yeah, I talk about that a lot.
Yeah, so because of that, right? And so let's tie this into the Tyree situation. Man, it's pretty depressing. Dang, he said, unfortunately, that describes me perfectly. It's depressing, right?
No,
so
I think it's an epidemic. No, I'm just going to say I think it's an epidemic. I can think a lot of brothers are dealing with this.
It is, man. And the thing is, because like I said, it's consciously or unconscious, a lot of us are dealing with it and we don't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I didn't even realize I was doing it for all those years because that's the norm. And since it's so normalized, we don't even realize that what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we just keep going on. We just get up, go to work. It's so ingrained that it's a joke now. Somebody jokingly said, "Yeah, I'm not going to keep nagging on him to do it because he's gonna get it done within 3 months." Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you think about that joke, right? And it's like, oh, he doesn't have anything else to do except this list of chores that's been given him to do, right? The only thing he's supposed to do in his life is go to work, come home, work onto this, go to sleep, get up, and do it again.
Mm-hmm. You said you're going to tie it into the Tyree situation.
Yeah. I'm sorry I went there because you went.
No, it's all
but
good.
yeah. So with the Tyree situation is pretty heartbreaking, right? Because now you got these police officers, right? I don't know. I wish we could interview the police officers because you know what it sounds like. They want to perform real good for Messi. They want to do real good on their job. Let me show you I'm a real police officer. Let me show you how good of a police officer I am. let me show you. Actually, this is what all the other police officers do. This is how the other police officers treat black men. It's so bad, y'all. So like, I got pulled over more than 20 times. I might be up to 30 times, but I got pulled over more than 20 times, right? One of the times I got pulled over, a police officer approached. Let me give you a demonstration. He approached my car like this. Say this is, and I'm like, bro, why you got your hand on a holster for? What you about to do? And guess what he was? Black. So white police officers pulled me over. They harassed me all the time. But the one who was ready to have his gun drawn on me was a black police officer. And so what happens is, one, with the John Henryism, they're trying to do their job to the best of their ability, just like Hop and Bob. Tell them about the gun line, boss. Tell them about the gun line, boss. Like, they all excited. Like what that's Malcolm X said that best. Remember he was talking about, he said, you sick? We sick too, boss. Your house burning down. Our house burning down too, boss. Like, what you talking about, bro? You love us that much?
It's ironic that he gave that speech in Selma, Alabama. People don't remember. People don't know that.
Oh yeah, that's wow.
No, he gave that speech in Selma, Alabama. He came down there when King was locked up down in Birmingham or Selma, one of the two.
That's crazy, right? So look, so you had a John Henryism on one hand, where this actually gonna bring it all together. You had a John Henryism where they're just working to show that, hey, give me a better spot on the plantation. Hey, I'm gonna be a good overseer. Hey, I'm gonna be good for you, master. But then you have the thingification, right? Where they themselves do not see. Let me say it this way. They see black people the way white people taught them to see black people. And you know what this connects right back to, right?
Come on.
Carter G. Woodson.
Before you start, I just want to tell everybody, if you know anything about me, you know I'm always preaching the virtues of the miseducation of the Negro, the book by Carter G. Woodson. If you have not read that book, get it on Amazon, go to a bookstore, go buy that book. It was written in 1932, and for better or for worse, the exact same things that Dr. Carter G. Woodson said in that book about academia and about our quote-unquote talent and tenth are right with us today. The exact same things. You can see even some of the exact same language. And on the one hand, that shows the brilliance of that work, and on the other hand, it's frightening as hell. But go ahead.
So he said the problems with the educated Negroes. So look at how he broke this down, right? So a lot of Negroes went to school. Yay, this is good. Negroes going to school. The problem is when they went to school, they went to these white schools and they got white education. White education teaches you to be what? White. To think what? White. So now that they're thinking is white and they're acting white, they can go, then they go back to the black schools. But this is why what Torraine said, why his work was so brilliant. Because now you have black teachers, right? Teaching black students. But the problem is that these black teachers think white and act white. So then now you have black students learning from black teachers how to what? Not think black and act black, but how to think white and act white. And that's exactly what happened with the police officers. The police officers now did the training, and that's another thing I wanted to mention too, because I used to be in the military, right? And there's definitely while you go through the training is an indoctrination, right? They literally have you repeating stuff. I bet you, just like us in the military, we had certain things we had to remember. We had to say every day. We did it every morning. We did this, and at 5 o'clock every day we did this. And I guarantee, if you look at police training, it's the same exact way. They're being indoctrinated. Yep. Look at Hop and Bobs. Look at them. They're some ugly dudes. They ugly.
Keep it going, man.
Right? Yeah, I'm sorry. That ugly just threw me off, bro. So look, right? So look at so they went through that training and they got this white indoctrination. So even though they look black, they actually think white and act white. And this white thinking had them thinking that Tyree was a thing. And so since they are a thing, this brings us all together to what we've been talking about this whole time. Now, I can do just like they raped the enslaved because they didn't see them as fully human. Now they can just beat him and pummel him because they don't see him as fully human. He's just a thing that they can just abuse. But in reality, he is fully human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is exactly what happened. They got that police academy indoctrination. They got that whiteness in them, right? So now they look back, but inside they're white. We in class today we call them Oreos, double stuff. they got double cream filling, right? So they double stuff Oreos, right? They double stuff Oreos because they got that whiteness that they was getting all their life and the whiteness of the police academy. So to bring it all together, they black externally, but internally they inherited this whiteness. They think white, they act white, and when they saw Tyree, they just saw a thing that they could do, just like slave master and just like white people have been doing to black people for all these centuries, because now they see them the same exact way that they see that white people see us. And so then they enact that violence, that very brutal violence on Tyree, not because they see Tyree as fully human, but because they see him as a thing. And
all right,
unfortunately, that's it.
Let me do some house cleaning real quick, and then we'll segue into the next part of the show. If you're just coming in, hello, my name is Torraine Walker. You're watching Torraine Walker TV. If you like what I'm doing, if you like my work, you can support either via Cash App at Torraine Walker, PayPal at Real Torraine Walker. I have a Patreon. You can look me up there at Torraine Walker again, and Venmo is Torraine Walker. Or you can just hit me up and shoot it via Cash App and LinkedIn as well. However you want to do it. Thank you for coming in to show love to the channel. All your support goes into keep building out the sets and keep bringing in guests like my brother Travis Harris. Let's move into one more thing, tying into what you just said. Yeah. Just the concept that's becoming more and more prevalent now, the idea that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And if you grew up in the Black community, we already know what this is like, sometimes in family, sometimes in quote unquote friends, sometimes frenemies. But we can extrapolate this out to talk about things that happen in media spaces, in workspaces, in law enforcement and other places. And thanks, or either through the fault of social media, depending on how you look at it, we see a lot more of this coming to the limelight from we have Black people in positions of authority who have really hostile attitudes towards Black people, and they have no fear of voicing these opinions with no fear of consequences up until very recently. Can you talk a little bit about that? And we'll definitely get into that. This is going to be heavy.
Yeah. So, but first, let's start where we started at the beginning. It's not a coincidence that these are the particular people who have a voice. It's not a coincidence that these are the particular people who have blue checks, who have the job with Anscape and ESPN, and who are talking on MSNBC or CNN, etc. They are the ones that said, hey, master, I want a better position on the plantation, right? And so like we said from the very beginning, it's the same exact thing that's going on. Those who are willing to do the will of white supremacy are going to be the ones who get promoted.
Now, talk a little bit how that plays out in the present day. You talked about how it was in the plantation and in the days after Reconstruction and Jim Crow. Talk about how that mentality plays out in the modern day in a corporate setting or in a media setting.
So let me give you two examples, and I don't care about talking about this openly. I used to be a professor at VCU, and I would talk. Actually, it's funny because I remember one day I was teaching about Carter G. Woodson, and I was teaching about the educated Negroes and how the educated class don't want to talk about this because it might affect their bottom line. It might affect their paycheck. And I was like, dang, they're not gonna like this. Sure enough, I had a student who identified as, I think, either a black feminist or black womanist. She made a false allegation about me. They made up another lie. Another student complained about her participation grade, and bing, bang, boom, they got rid of it. Now look, My chair was a black man. The dean, the assistant dean, was a black woman. The chair evidently has a history of getting rid of people because that department I was in, the African American Studies department, has not put one black male on tenure track. Not one black male has received tenure track yet in that department. Has received tenure in that department. So that's one thing.
Ever, or how long has it been?
Ever. Well, because it's a newer department, right? Because remember, African American Studies is pretty new. I think the department only started in like 80s or 90s, right?
That's still a pretty long time, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, guess what happened to that dean? Not only did she get promoted, but she got promoted to a whole nother university. I think to Rose College. So think about that. You unjustly fired me, got rid of me in the middle of a pandemic, and not only do and in the process they literally broke their VCU rules and regulations and the state of Virginia rules and regulations. So not only did they break rules and regulations, not only did they not go through the proper way of getting rid of me, but they actually got promoted. And I'm like, this makes sense. This is how the system works. Those who are willing to do the bidding of white supremacy are going to be promoted in a white supremacist system. That's one thing, right? That's a very clear example of academia, right? So if you think about that, you can really just take that across the board in corporate America. Who's going to do whatever it takes to make it in corporate America? Let's go to another one we both know where. Media.
Save that for a second because I want to.
Okay.
We're going to go back into that real quick.
Okay.
Let's stick with academia for a minute, or as I like to call it, wackademia, because they're two different things. Yeah. We've seen this, and I know you and I have seen this, and other people have seen this. There's this thing that happens a lot on social media where there's a lot of nihilistic language and there's a lot of hateful language about Black people, especially Black men in particular, that's allowed to go unchecked. And this is coming from people who are not bots. They're not people who are anonymous. These are people who are using their government name and their positions in academia and in other places, in media and other places like that, to say these hateful things with no real consequences. I mean, and they're allowed to say things about Black males that you could not say about any other group and hope to keep your job or hope to get tenure. But that's allowed to go out, and that's allowed to fester in these in the academy and in industries and go out into the wider world. Let's talk a little bit about that and the danger of that.
Yeah, so let's be clear, right? Like Torraine said, these are not bots. These are blue checks. These are
for people who don't know, tell them what a blue check is.
Oh yeah, blue check. Oh, that's right, because Twitter's changing so that you can buy blue check there. But across social media between Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, blue check would be a verified profile, as in they are a person of like sometimes. So like, of course, Donald Trump, LeBron James, a popular person would get a blue check. So
I have one, but I'm not one, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, these are people who are popular and well known. They're popular and well known outside of social media, so they get the blue check on social media, right? So what happened was, let's be clear about this, right? This is not just feminist studies, right, with a particular group. This is in counseling, psychology, doctors, medical field, health, business, all across academia. These same exact views are spewed. Let me tell you some of the words they say. They say we need to do things like abolish Black men. They say that they're not killing you niggas fast enough. I'm sorry. Let me give y'all a warning because this is very disgusting. We're not killing you fast enough. It says that they can't die right. I guess they can't die right. Oh yeah, these are some bullet bags. And so those are 4 examples, right? And you hear this, you're like, hold on, what's going on, right? And so one of them, Jamel Lemieux, I might be saying her name wrong. She the one who wrote this article about David Chappelle and the big lie, and it's like, what? And then there's this one Twitter user who made the joke, ha ha ha, these Black men can't even die right. Aisha Callahan retweets it or she either retweets or laughs about it, right? And she's been writing and for producing for BET, and I think even either Ebony or Essence, right? Brittany Dines, I can't remember Brittany's last name. She also laughed about the Can't Die Right. After this happened, she gets promoted and with ESPN to be a writer for Escape. It's called like Anscape, ANDSKAPSCAPE, which is supposed to deal with like race and sports, right? So just like what happened in my academic job in the academy, these same things are happening in the media, right? And these same people and these same academics, right? Then of course everybody know about Brittany Cooper or whatever. But they all are spewing. Now let me be clear, they're not saying, well, no, they were laughing about I Can't Die Right. A different group, a different person, Get Her Jade, her Twitter's handle is Get Her Jade. She was the one who called on black men bullet bags. She has like, I think like 20,000 viewers, followers, right? So this is important. This is important for multiple reasons. But the biggest one is these aren't just random, obscure people. These are people who have influence that are reaching the masses. I think Jade maybe have a master's degree. I think she only has an undergrad. Another one's a Princeton student, and she's a PhD student at Princeton. Brittany is at Rutgers University. I can't remember some, but go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
I'm just saying that these are people who are at the top universities all over our country. That's right. Another woman said that misandry wasn't even a thing. And it's just like now it got to the point where Torraine and I was just like, oh, these people are just academics. Like it became expected that before we even looked at who they were, that this was just another academic saying this. So let this sink in. Now, you have academics keying about Can't Die Right, right? You have academics who are saying we need to abolish black men. And so these same academics are the ones teaching our young people. So look, what is it they're teaching? And to bring that all together, it makes sense that they want to get rid of somebody like me who's teaching actual revolutionary education. And heaven forbid, what happened was I had Tommy Curry to guest lecture in my class. Oh my gosh. So Tommy Curry, so I'm teaching about Carter G. Woodson. I got Tommy Curry coming in teaching about black male vulnerability, right? And that's the other part. I actually dealt with black feminism, right? Because as a scholar, you're supposed to teach all that. But in the same school, right, another student said that she took a black feminist course, and I'm glad this is going to bring it all together. She said that I had to leave the class. I had to leave the class because she said, Dr. Harris, it was just so bad. They just spoke so badly about black men. They didn't give a fair critique about them, and they pretty much was just bashing the whole course. So she was like, I just had to drop the course. And this is exactly what happens. Because if you can key online about not being able to die right, and you say we need to abolish black men, then of course when you're teaching, you're engaged with students, you can be pushing and spewing the same exact rhetoric.
Mm-hmm. And you can't say that doesn't filter out from the classroom and doesn't filter down through whatever industry you're in, into the mentality of young people who are coming into whatever industry you're coming into, to think that this is the way you have to move to be able to advance in an industry.
Exactly. Yep. That's a good point, right? Because you think about all these college graduates who took all these feminist courses, now they think, oh, matter of fact, you know what? I need to make sure I be getting paid a certain amount, right? Because we need to have rights and we need to be treated right. And then it's like when you get out in the world, when it's based on like, you know, your actual skills, your talents, your CV, your resume, and all these different factors, then they surprised. Like, hold on, what you talking about? We need to I ain't gonna say it.
Yeah. We'll keep it going on
right.
that one.
But the point is like exactly what you're saying, right? They really aren't preparing them for the world, but they fill them up with this it's almost getting cultish now, right? Because I'll tell you, I'm a Black male studies scholar, and I've actually published a special issue in the Journal of Sexuality, is journal issue 8, journal volume 8, number 4, and we lay out a lot of basically the study of Black men. And as a Black male studies scholar, we actually challenge a lot of these views. Unfortunately, they have been received with pretty much just hatred, right? I'm like, okay, let's have a scholarly intellectual conversation, right? This is one of the ones we're currently having, right? So the prevailing idea was that Black men were raping and sexually abusing Black women, right? And then shout out to Tommy Curry, he found this study that said in reality, it's not a disproportionate sexual abuse of Black men over Black women. In reality, violence is bidirectional. What does bidirectional mean? It means that Black women sexually assault Black men and Black men sexually assault Black women, right?
But even with that though, no, I'm just saying. But even with that data, the fact that there's this idea of a Black boogeyman, and there's also this idea, and we can even take it out of the realm of just Black men. There's this idea that there's a subculture, for lack of a better term, of Black people that can be abused, and nobody has anything to say about it because this affects Black women as well.
Right.
But if you're talking about a system that's already anti-Black, and you have people who are willing to enforce the anti-Blackness either through violence, state violence, or through just directional violence, or just violence in the home, all these things tie together. And I think if you have institutional reinforcement that you can abuse these people and it's okay, then what does that say about us? What does that say about some of our people who are willing to go along with that? That's the point I want to get at.
And yeah, and especially when it makes sense now. I didn't see it as clearly back then as I do now. But when I was teaching a balanced perspective. I was saying, hey, let's look at both sides. Because as a professor, my job is to give you all the information possible, right? And that's why I'm saying, like, this is problematic. Because why would you say, no, we only want you to understand Black feminism? We don't, and that's the other thing that's happened. Black studies has become Black feminism. I was just in a dialogue with a professor. She's at Emory PhD, Emory African American Studies program. And I was like, so what theoretical framework are you coming from? Basically, like, what's informing your thought? And she said, Black feminism. So now all these Black feminist professors are teaching all the Black studies classes. And I saw that same exact thing while I was in grad school. Because I was like, when I was in grad school, I was like, hey, I want to go take the Black classes. Mm-hmm. I want to go listen to the Black presentations at conferences, right? I want to go read the Black books. And pretty much what was being given to me was Black feminism. And so to wrap this all up, the problem I'm saying is that this has led to, unfortunately, having a one-sided perspective of what's going on. And this one-sided perspective is very toxic. This one-sided perspective puts some of the same white supremacist notions that Black people have been fighting against for years.
All right. Let's bring in another part of the conversation. You talked earlier about the idea of people who are Black in the academy and in other places having great disdain for Black people. Let's talk a little bit about how that mentality is allowed to fester in academia and in industries, like I said earlier. And also, can we talk about how people like that, whether it be like these 5 police officers or people in industries, are used as a shield for white people, and even quote unquote supposedly progressive white people, to say anti-Black things, but they use these people as a shield. I know you've experienced that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So yeah, it's twofold, right? First of all, it's the system, right? The system is designed to elevate whiteness and to subjugate or push down Blackness. And CL is exactly right. There's actually, just side note, if y'all are interested, just DM me or hit me up. There's this the Tony Brown show had Ishmael Reed and one of the early Black feminists on it, and they went back and forth, and it was pretty much it looked bad for the Black feminists. Let me just say that it looked bad for the Black feminists. But it's twofold, right? One, the system is white. The system is designed to elevate whiteness and to subjugate blackness, or to elevate white people, or even black people who think and act white, and push down black people, or black people who think and act black, right? So that's the first part. The second part to this is, and this also ties in with academia, there is no accountability. So think about this, right? Once you enter these systems, you're leaving your family, you're leaving your black neighborhoods, if they grew up in a black neighborhood, because some of these people pretty much never even grew up in a black neighborhood, right? Some of these people grew up in middle-class white neighborhoods. They went to all white schools. When they went to college, they went to a predominantly white school. So pretty much their whole life, they've been around whiteness, right? So what happens is, when they get into these institutions, into these white institutions, then they can get in there and there's no accountability. They do not have the same accountability that we have in our black spaces, right? In our black, like I'm back in I'm from the hood, right? And in the hood, there's gonna be, you can't just say and do things, right? There's gonna be consequences, and let me say it. It's not. And let me be clear. I'm not trying to make it seem like there's an animalistic and we all just are and raging, but it's like, no, like, you gotta respect people, right? Mm-hmm. We're black, and as black people, we are humans, right? And ever since the slave, all the way to now, when we all get together, then we are able to elevate our humanness, right? So it's not just this. I don't know what picture people have of the hood, but I just want to be clear that in the hood, we love on each other, right? And so in these black spaces, you're gonna, if you get out of line, right, you will be held accountable. But when you get in these white institutions, there is literally no accountability at all. And unfortunately, because it's a white institution, it's actually the opposite. They praise you and elevate you more. So the key ingredient to let this stuff, like you say, fester and grow is the lack of accountability. They don't have accountability in these institutions. And since they don't have accountability, then the black people who are in these spaces, they can literally say and do whatever they want.
Now, here's something that's interesting about that. This ties into your point earlier. I think over the past couple of months, you're starting to see some of these people face the harsh reality of the real world, because you're starting to see some people who have said some hateful things about black people deal with some real world consequences. I know everybody's not on social media, but there was this one quote unquote therapist who basically fired herself because she didn't know how to get off of TikTok talking about her black male, her clients, her patients. And that got back to her employment, and that got her fired. So now she's basically a professional TikToker. There was a lawyer, which was really actually kind of scary. There was a lawyer who made the comment on social media about black men being bullet bags, and she worked for, I think she was in the tech. I know she was licensed by the Texas bar. I don't know what the consequences of the situation were, but it became a thing where, and I have it up right here, she basically had to pull off her social media, and I don't know what professional consequences she had to face, but she basically completely shut down her social media because she called black men bullet bags. So you're starting to see more and more of these people who think everything is all sweet on social media saying things in public, and it gets back to the people who sign their paychecks, and all of a sudden they either get very humble or they disappear. So you're starting to see that now. And I don't know if it's because if it's an age thing or it's because of the generation, but even with the things you're talking about and the way that society applauds people who feel like this to a certain level, you're starting to see some harsh consequences starting to happen. And I'm not upset at it, but it's just fascinating to see how people are going to react to this as the time goes on. But these are just two examples of some things that I think are going to happen more and more.
Yeah, and because you know why? At the end of the day, no matter how much they think white, no matter how much they act white, no matter how much they dress, no matter how much they perform, at the end of the day, they still black, right? And this is, and I actually hope some of them see this message, right? Because you, like, at the end, you're still disposable, right? They can literally, and we don't need you anymore, pluck you out and just find another one.
The wake up
Just get
call
rid
comes
of
real quick.
huh?
The wake up call comes fast sometimes.
It comes real fast. You didn't expect that, Jordan. That 5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock a.m. Yes, it is. It is. And so this is the thing. I just say be careful, right? And I also can say be careful because Torraine and I know what's going on too. So because some stuff is happening. A wave is coming. It already started. Some people already lost their accounts, and some accounts already got deactivated. So all I'm saying is be careful. You can perform for massa as much as you can, but at the end of the day, you still disposable. You still a Negro, and if they want to get rid of you, they can.
Shout out to the brother Sonny Block. White supremacy always breaks their tools. That's a very popular saying among certain quarters, and some people are learning that the hard way.
Yep.
So we'll just leave it at that. All right, let's tie it up with saying let's put together some solutions. How can we push back against some of this dehumanization that the society gives people, and how can we push back against Black people who bought into that dehumanization?
So first, it's going to go back. I'm going to take it all the way back to the foundation, right? In my organization, our ideology, we actually live by Ubuntu. I am because we are.
Explain that one more time for people who may not know what Ubuntu means.
So Ubuntu is this African, you can say, ideology and way of life. The saying that captures it is, I am because we are. As in, my existence, my life is connected to our lives, right? So then it's not just about me, Hood Scholar. It's not just about Torraine. It's about Hood Scholar and Torraine together. So if I win, Torraine win. If Torraine wins, I win. We feeding off each other. We building each other up. It's so dope that what we found out is that we can reach another level in ourselves when we work together, right? And let me give you a very practical example. Think about fighters, right? Fighters, when they got to prepare for a different fighter, they have to go to another level. Actually, I don't know if anybody watched MMA, but it was Usman and Edwards. Usman lost to Edwards. So if Usman going to beat Edwards, he's going to have to train even harder and to go to that another level. This same thing with hip hop, right? When hip hop first started, they used to battle. And in these battles, whether it was breaking, whether it was rapping, whether it was graffiti, they look, all right, oh, I lost. I took this L. So what they had to do, they had to go back. They had to practice. So there's this wild, dope, vibrant, creative energy that happens when we build off of each other that we miss when we stay in that individualistic mindset, right? So for me, the first step is to go back to that foundation of what was lost. I am because we are.
All right. I think that's what we're going to put a pin in things.
Okay.
No, we're good, brother. It's been a really good conversation. I want to thank everybody for joining me again on the birth of the relaunch of Torraine Walker TV. Like I said at the top of the show, thank you all for riding with me while I got everything squared away the way I want it. We're going to do bigger and better things. We got some real hot things lined up. I hope you'll all rock with me for the whole time. And I want to thank my guest, Dr. Travis, Hood Scholar. He doesn't really like to use his doctor that much. He calls himself Travis. Yeah. I'll call him Hood Scholar, but I say respect you. You know, you earn those laurels, and there's a lot of people who call themselves doctor who went to school that really don't deserve their credibility. But that's a whole nother conversation that I don't want to touch right now, so we'll leave it alone. But Travis, man, thank you for being the first guest on the relaunch show on the first day of Black History Month.
Definitely, man. Hopefully I brought it, man.
No, you always bring it, brother. Thank you for coming through.
Yeah.
I hope this is a whole lot better set than
your set is fire, bro.
Than the drop cloth I had last year.
that mic is clean. You got to speak freely. Oh, tell them about the newspaper joints.
Oh, okay. All right. Hold on a second. Yeah. Tell you a little bit about the backdrop that I put together. This behind me right here is something that I had made. This is basically an artwork put together of different Black newspapers. Some of them are still operational, like the Chicago Defender. Some of them are no longer here, unfortunately, like the Tulsa Star. That was a neighborhood newspaper of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Black Wall Street that was Black owned. We got the Black Panther newspaper, shout out to them, the Amsterdam News that Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad wrote for. So that's basically what that is. I'm just trying to channel some of that energy through what I do to put it out into the public. I didn't even know that you noticed that, man. But yeah, that's what that is back there.
Yeah, that joint fire, doc. That joint is fire, man. Yeah, also, man, I just want to say I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you for having me on the show. I'm always humbled when people ask me to come on, whether it's to speak or to be on the show. So yeah, salute to you, brother.
Nah, man, you always bring the heat, man. We got a whole lot more going on, brother. Oh, hold on. Let's see what's going on. Somebody said something. Thanks, guys, and welcome back, Torraine. I got one of your Black Men Speak Freely shirts. Thank you for that. Appreciate you. Appreciate you for that.
Yeah,
I got
the chat actually ended up getting live as we was getting closer.
Yeah.
Black Nova Scotia, CL, Sunny Black.
Yeah, people from Nova Scotia. That's dope, though. I'm gonna put it all in. But yeah, I'm actually getting ready to put up some more Black Men Speak Freely shirts. I got a new design I'm gonna come out with. I'm gonna debut them on something really major real soon. So once I do that, then I'll start rolling them out. So thank you for picking up the shirt. I'm gonna do the online store again too, coming up in the next couple of weeks. But no, thanks to everybody for coming through. You're right though. People are popping in at the end. You know how we do. When it's last call, that's when everybody comes through. But I appreciate that. I love all our people. Thank you. Yeah. Thank everybody for coming through.
He was asking when's the future time.
Oh, okay. What I'm going to try to do is try to hold to like between 8. I'm going to try to go live between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock and go like for like an hour to an hour and a half. I want to try to get the show real lean and get more guests in, because I know sometimes if you go 3 or 4 hours, people don't have time for that, and it starts to drag. So what I'm going to try to do is hold to like 8 o'clock if possible on Wednesdays. Thursdays, I'm trying to go live maybe like twice, maybe 3 times a week, but I don't hold me to that. It's going to be at least once a week, maybe 2. I'll see how it plays out, but it's going to be 8 or 9 o'clock to catch everybody. So just bear with me. I'm going to have it lined up.
All right, bro. All right, man.
All right, everybody. So thank you, brother, again. I appreciate you. Much love.
Black History Month, baby. Black Power.
Real Black History Month. All right, everybody. We're going to shut it down. Everybody, thanks again for coming through. Much love. Y'all have a good night. Be safe.